So I want to make America great again. I want to join the team. And let me tell you, we're going to do this today, starting today, April 4th, 2025. And let me tell you a little bit of why today I've decided to do it. I'm going to read it so it'll be faster because I'm not going to do a lot of talking today. It will be somebody else sending you a message. Martin Luther King Jr., an American civil rights activist and Christian minister, was fatally shot on a hotel balcony in Memphis, Tennessee on April 4th, 1968, around 6 p.m. Central Time, which is around this time right now. He was shot, and many people say that James Earl Ray, who was a criminal and a convict with a history of violence, was really a pawn and a scapegoat. And he was used by the U.S. government and law enforcement. And it's a claim that's been going around for decades. And it reminds me a little bit of what happened with the J6 rioters that attacked the Capitol. And I just keep thinking, if Trump hadn't won, if he had lost, they'd still be sitting there. There would have been a James Earl Ray. But let me go ahead and jump over this because he is a person, MLK Jr., Dr. King. He was someone who was persecuted back then by the FBI. And there were claims that he was a communist, that he was a radical, and all these things that you hear today about people like Mahmoud Khalil and people that are just doing their First Amendment right protest. And I'm not going to talk much more because it's I just want to bring up the point that to remind you that Dr. King helped bring about the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and the Fair Housing Act of 1968. And today the Trump administration is trying to get rid of a lot of those benefits that are in those acts. And that's why we're going over this. And now when I quote this and I read it out, think about it in context of today, not 50 years ago, but it fully applies, especially the first one I'm going to give you. Here we go. We must rapidly begin to shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society. When machines and computers, profit motives, and property rights are considered more important than people, the giant triplets of racism, materialism, and militarism are incapable of being conquered. 2. Never again can we afford to live with the narrow, provincial, outside agitator idea. Anyone who lives inside the United States can never be considered an outsider anywhere within its bounds. One may well ask, how can you advocate breaking some laws and obeying others? The answer lies in the fact that there are two types of laws, just and unjust. I would be the first to advocate obeying just laws. One has not only a legal but a moral responsibility to obey just laws. Conversely, one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. I would agree with St. Augustine that an unjust law is no law at all. Reminds me of a city in Florida. There must be a recognition on the part of everybody in this nation that America is still a racist country. Now, however unpleasant that sounds, it is the truth. And we will never solve the problem of racism until there is recognition of the fact that the racism still stands and at the order of so much of our nation. And we must see racism for what it is. Fifth, it may well be that we may have to repent on this generation, not merely for the vitriolic words of the bad people who will say bad things in a meeting like this, or who will bomb a church in Birmingham, Alabama, but for the appalling silence and indifference of the good people who sit around and say, wait on time. Sixth. Now, we got to get this thing right. What is needed is a realization that power without love is reckless and abusive, and that love without power is a sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is love correcting everything that stands against love. And the price, eighth, and the price that the United States must pay for the continued exploitation and oppression of the Negro and other minorities is the price of its own destruction. And lastly, and this is in regards of the Tesla protests, they seem a little bit too strong. I must say tonight that a riot is the language of the unheard. And what is it America has failed to hear? It has failed to hear that the promises of freedom and justice have not been met. And it has failed to hear the large segments of society that are more concerned about tranquility and the status quo than about justice and humanity. And that is all for today. Have a good one.